Hey everybody, Mike B back with another video. Today I'm going to be talking about a topic that's kind of been going through my mind after I was talking to my cousin a couple weeks ago, and he was saying that he prefers striker fired and all that stuff, or I'm sorry, hammer fired pistols versus striker fired because of a bunch of different reasons that really didn't make much sense. It just indicated to me that he had just had less experience with the striker fired. And so we were talking, and then I was talking to some of my friends they're not currently firearm owners, but someday they probably will be for home defense and recreation. And we were talking about like what they would be more comfortable with, and I let them handle both of these firearms. Both of them were unloaded, so before the safety Nazis feel their obligatory, YouTube, I'm better than you, browbeating bullshit. I'm pretty, safe with firearms. I've been around them my whole life, never had an accident, so. Anyway, that little disclaimer aside, so we were kind of, they were fondling these things, for lack of a better term, and they're very inexperienced. I don't think either of them one of them has never fired a weapon, and the other one has fired one once, kind of, at a party somewhere, somebody had a gun, and they shot it a couple times and whatever, so very unfamiliar. So that's where I'm kind of basing this off of. It was a neat observation for me. Like, I kind of had this suspicion that it was going to be this way, but I wasn't able to confirm it until I was hanging around my friends that I just talked about. So what happened was when I told them how to, check to see the basic safety, on a handgun, most of them are going to have the mag release here. I told them how to, do this, drop the magazine, keep it pointed in a safe direction, pull the slide back, check not only the chamber, but again, the magazine well, just as a confirmation before you ever, touch a firearm. And then I said, okay, here's how this thing works. Put the magazine in, obviously there's going to be a round in there, and it'll go back forward. You're ready to fire. And I said, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. They said, well, what about carrying it? Like, what do I do to carry it safely? Is there any safety on it? I said, no, a striker fire is usually going to have several internal safeties, and I explained the trigger and all that stuff, like on a Glock and all that stuff. And they were like, oh, okay. So I said, yeah, pretty much just rack it, put it in the holster, and it's generally going to be safe. It's still a mechanical device that was made by a human, so there's always the 0.001% chance that something can go wrong. Some piece of metal is worn or something just hits it right and it goes off, but highly unlikely. And so yeah, and then I gave them sorry about the squeaky floor, guys. It's an old building. I gave them the Beretta M92FS, right? And they're like, oh, this is really comfortable, really cool. They also said it about the Glock. And they're like, oh, and I told them that this is, pretty much what the military carried, minor differences. But I was like, yeah, this is essentially an M9. They're like, oh, okay, it's heavier and whatever. I was like, yeah, well, I mean, there's polymer-framed hammer-fired guns, such as my Israeli Jericho 941P and the PX4 Storm, both of which I do appreciate and I love. So this isn't like a bashing of anything, but what I noticed is when they held this one, they were a lot more scared. And I was like, what, you guys okay? Like, what's going on? And what I noticed is they were looking at it, they go, this one looks a lot more complicated. And I'm sitting there going, well, it's not really. It's the same thing except the hammer and all that shit's on the outside. But I was like, well, actually, that's a valid point. It looks a lot more complicated because now you've got this back here. You've got this safety. And the disassembly thing is a little bit bigger, disassembly latch, and then the slide release is a little bit bigger than what you'd see usually on a striker fired pistol. This isn't a blanket statement thing. This is just a generalization. And so I was like, okay, well, it's the same thing. So they dropped the magazine, right? And I said, okay, pull the slide back. And so they did. They checked it, manually checked it. I said, see, that's all the same. And now we got to this point. And they were like, what do I do now? I said, well, there's this thing called a decocker, which you should really not trust completely. Again, it's a mechanical device. But I said, just point it in a safe direction and, flip the thing down. The hammer will go forward. It won't allow the weapon to be fired. And this, I explained the internal safety with the trigger right there and that little, I'm just at a loss for vocabulary, little thing that pops up right there to allow the firing pin to actually go forward. So I explained all that it's a very safe pistol. But it was just, and I said, you just flip this back, and then your first shot, it's a double action, and I explained all that. And they still were like, I like the Glock better. I said, why is that? And they're like, there's a lot less steps to remember. It's a lot, as a new person that's not really experienced with guns, it's a lot easier to kind of handle a striker-fired pistol where all you do is throw the magazine in, rack it, and holster it. You don't have to go through that extra step of decocking it, or even manually decocking it with the trigger and all that stuff. And I was like, well, that's very interesting. I hadn't even thought of it that way because, again, I've been around firearms my whole life, so all these seem pretty simple to me. But for a new shooter, for a person that's got little to no experience with a firearm, especially a handgun, it can be very intimidating to see all these extra parts on the outside, the hammer and everything. Because people think hammer, they think revolver, and they think, oh, this is supposed to be like a semi-automatic, so why is all this extra stuff up here? Well, that's why, and I explained it to them, but they were still favoring, just from their first kind of feel experience, the Glock over the Beretta M92FS. Now, again, their opinion really isn't worth anything as far as we know, or as far as we're concerned, because we're all experienced more or less with firearms. But their opinion's worth something in the matter of fact of if you got a friend or a family member that is just getting into firearms, right, and they want to, say, get their concealed carry permit, concealed weapons permit, whatever it's called in your state, and they want to, go out and actually buy a handgun. Maybe start them off with a striker-fired handgun so they can get the fundamentals and everything, and it's just less steps for a beginner to learn on than, say, the Beretta M9, or I keep calling it an M9. You guys know it's a 92FS, sorry. I look at it, I see M9. It is what it is. But, I mean, seriously, when you think about it, if you start somebody out on a striker-fired, right, they can learn the fundamentals on that. It's a lot easier for a newbie to handle, and then progressively move them on to hammer-fired pistols. Now, my cousin's preference for hammer-fired was the trigger pull and all that stuff, and I explained about the trigger reset on a striker-fired, et cetera, et cetera. It's the same on a hammer-fired, but I explained that, both have their advantages, disadvantages. It's all personal preference. So after somebody becomes familiar, then it's personal preference. I'm just talking from a completely, new person standpoint getting into this. It might be a better idea to start them out with a striker-fired. So, Glock is, obviously, I like Glocks. I'm not a fanboy, I don't think they're the best thing in the world. They serve their purpose. They're definitely functional. They're somewhat comfortable, but they also have their drawbacks. Some people just don't like them, and that's fine. The Beretta, same exact things I just said. So, both these pistols are really good, but from a new person standpoint, this one's going to be a little bit more intimidating. And I understand why. Because if you're not familiar with guns, more moving parts, more steps, is more to remember when you're trying to learn something that you're uncomfortable with. So be aware of that and try to be patient when you're talking with people that kind of are taking up interest in guns, because when you were first starting out, you didn't know everything. And you had to have people that were patient with you and help you out. So yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. Kind of a little different video, but the idea popped in my head because I was talking to my cousin about this, and then with my friends hanging out and them kind of pointing that out to me. I thought that was pretty good information to pass along. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. I'll try to keep this rather short. Oh my God, we're almost over 8 minutes. Yeah, again, not a fanboy per se of either one of these. I like them. I can hit what I'm aiming at with both of them. Cool beans. Not saying one's better than the other. I'm just saying, perhaps, like I said 1,000 times, I'm just talking in circles now. But yeah, perhaps this might be a more viable option. I'll leave comments open as long as they don't get too stupid like they usually do with gun-related stuff, because all the experts come out of the woodwork and everybody knows everything about guns because that makes you cool or something. I don't understand it, but no, I'm not professing to be an expert. I'm just pointing out what I observed and with real people, and I even learned something in that respect. So, excuse me. Yeah, hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed a little bit of gun porn. I promise I'll get out and start shooting soon. It's been so cold and just disgustingly snowy. We just got 3 more inches yesterday on top of the 12 that's been standing. Not really ideal shooting weather, and it's too cold, and I'm kind of a pansy ass and don't like the cold even though I live way up here. So, but I will be getting out this summer, making some more shooting videos. I'll be doing a lot of helmet ballistic tests. I know I said I'd do that last year, but just it's too busy last year. But this year, we're going to be doing some cool stuff. All right. Enough rambling, Mike. Good God. Yeah, I might as well just talk until it's an even 10 minutes. Why not? I like even numbers. But anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you learned something. Let me know what you think in the comments. Get some good discussion going. Again, sorry I haven't been doing more shooting videos, but it is what it is. Let me know what you think, and make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I know I'm long-winded, but I'm not like this in all my videos. And then hit the notification bell. And that's it. We'll see you next time.